Welcome to Real Estate Investing for Women. On this show, you will learn how to create wealth through real estate the blissful way. That means with very little stress and very little time. We talk about strategies, mindset, heart set, money smarts, resources, and so much more to ensure you're able to create the success you most deeply desire. Now, here's your host, Moneeka Sawyer.
Today, I am so excited to welcome back to the show, Mike Wolf. I've had him on the show a couple times already. Ladies, you love him, and several of you have gone to his 3-day workshop, and I got great reviews on that. So I'm super excited to bring Mike back to have another very cool conversation. But before we lead into the conversation, I want to introduce him again for those of you who haven't met him yet. Mike has been investing in real estate for over 30 years, kind of like me. He's also a sought after international speaker, including an appearance on the TEDx stage, philanthropist and mentor to a group of students he affectionately calls the Wolf Pack. Mike helps people create a lifestyle of freedom and helps them get out of the rat race. Hey, Mike, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me. Always great to see you.
Yeah, it's always great. It feels like it's been so long. So good to be able to chat again.
Way overdue.
Yeah, way overdue. So ladies, when Mike and I were in the green room, he was asking me how Africa went, and I was giving him some stories or whatever. It turns out he's speaking in South Africa soon. He doesn't have an exact date. And the thing that he's speaking about is becoming a passive income nomad. So it's an event for digital nomads, right? So that people can work and have freedom and travel. But he wants to help them to go from digital to passive income so they work even less. So I kind of want to have that conversation here for you ladies to kind of see where he's headed with that. And I think that'll really support us in choosing bliss, right? So anyway, so Mike, could you tell us a little bit more about sort of your angle on this? Like, first of all, what is a passive income nomad?
Yeah, well, first of all, let me define passive income, because I think that's really important. And a lot of people don't really understand it, or they think it's this myth sort of thing that doesn't really exist. So passive income is the act of doing something one time and getting paid for it over and over and over. And there's been a couple of times where I posted on social media about passive income, and a lot of times people say scam or something like that. And so just to give you an example, look at Michael Jackson. He's been dead for quite a few years now. He made more money last year dead than I did alive. And probably everybody watching this put together, he made more money than all of us, and he's dead. So because he created passive income that keeps going on and on and on, and now his estate gets to benefit from that. He did something one time, went in the studio, recorded the album, and people continue to buy those records. So we can do the same thing with real estate. When we buy a rental property, we buy it one time. And then if we're really smart, instead of trying to manage it ourselves, because that's creating a job for ourselves, if we put a team, we get a good team, not just any team. You have to have a good team in place that manages it, deals with the tenants, collects the rent, puts it in your bank account at the end of the month. And if whatever it is that your passion is, for me, it happens to be travel. So I have the freedom to travel, and I know that money is coming in at the end of the month without me having to do anything to get it. And so there's numerous ways to create passive income. Real estate's not the only one, but I think it's the best one. And so when I go speak to these digital nomads, a lot of them are living their dream and they're traveling, but they're staying in, pretty mediocre accommodations, or they're, living in hostels. There's nothing wrong with that if that's what you want to do. And a lot of them are looking for odd jobs, and hey, I'll be a bartender when I get to this country. They're doing a lot of odd jobs, and I think they're working too hard to support that lifestyle that they love. And it's possible, even if you don't have a ton of money, to start getting into the real estate game. A lot of people don't know that, though. And so they end up taking really low paying jobs just to make ends meet. And I'd much rather be a passive income nomad where my money's coming in without me having to work, than being that person who has to, everywhere I go, make sure I've got a job lined up, or try to figure out a way to, have a place to sleep at night and have food on my table. And so that's what I'm going to be teaching them, is how do you transition from being the digital nomad to the passive income nomad?
Okay. So since most of my ladies are probably not digital nomads, right? Let's just jump into, how do you become a passive income nomad?
Well, there's definitely some steps involved. Most people can't just most people don't have the money in their bank account where they can just go buy 10 rental properties tomorrow, at least not the ones that I talk to on a daily basis. So sometimes we have to build up to that. And so a good example is taking something that normally isn't passive and making it passive. So let me explain. One of the strategies that I teach my students in the Wolf Pack that I'm most known for, I teach a lot of different strategies, but one of them that I'm most known for is something called tax deeds. And what a tax deed is, when somebody hasn't paid their property taxes in 3 or 4 years, eventually the county needs that money to keep their schools open and pay for their police department, fire department, etc. And so they eventually put these homes up for auction. I've had some of my students pick up single family homes for like $7,000. That's not the down payment. That was the actual purchase price on a home worth, let's say 90 or 100,000. But normally there's a lot of moving parts to that. Normally you have to go and drive around and view the properties. You got to pull title. There's a whole bunch of things you have to do in order to do that strategy safely. And so, if you're somebody who likes to travel all the time, you don't necessarily want to have to go to an auction on a certain day of every month. You don't want to have to fly back from wherever you're at. And so one of the things that I've done is I've built teams, and I've got somebody on the ground, for example, that goes to the auction on behalf of my students. So my favorite auction, they're all over the United States, but my favorite one takes place in Houston, Texas. And I have people as far away as Australia participating in that auction from the comfort of their own home, because I have a team on the ground that goes and views the properties and videotapes it, and they pull title and they do all the necessary steps for you so that you don't actually have to physically be there, including going to the auction itself. Matter of fact, my student who picked up the best deal, the $7,200 property, it was worth around 90 or 100. He lives in California. He was not at that auction. And a matter of fact, he didn't even have $7,200. So I showed him how to raise that money. And so this is what's possible, is that you can take just about anything. I used to own a pub, and I can't think of anything with more moving parts than owning a pub, but I had a partner who did all the work. I was the money part. I put up all the money, and we managed to both make a lot of money off this pub that was previously losing a lot, it was bleeding money like crazy. We turned it around and started to make a lot of money, but I never did a day's work in that pub ever. And that was by design. We agreed on that when we did our joint venture. And I said, listen, you're never going to have to take a dime out of your pocket for anything, including the purchase of the pub, but I'm never going to do a day's work. So if a cook doesn't show up, don't call me, I'm not going to be there. And so we agreed to that beforehand. So I took something that normally has just so many different moving parts and so many things that can go wrong. By the way, if you ever own a pub or restaurant, as glamorous as it seems, it's a lot of work. And the biggest enemy of owning a pub is employee theft. So alcohol, food, that all goes out the back door, and people serving their friends. You have to have somebody there all the time that knows what they're doing. And so anyway, I don't want to necessarily go into all the details of the pub, but you can take something like that. And I was traveling while we owned that pub, and I was still making a lot of money, and I very rarely went in there. And so that's what's possible, but a lot of people don't understand. They don't know how to build the teams. They think that all these moving parts have to be done by them. A lot of us entrepreneurs, we tend to be control freaks, so we don't think anybody else can do it as well as we can. And even when we reluctantly hire our first people because we have to, we're running out of time, we're getting burnt out, we're getting overwhelmed, we have to hire somebody or we can't continue. Well, then we micromanage them to death. And now, instead of actually doing the work, we're spending just as much time, but instead we're micromanaging and babysitting. And so that's some of the stuff that I love to teach my students, is how do you build your dream team that has your back, and you have to take care of them too. It's not a one-way street. But if you take good care of them and they take good care of you, you can build something that really requires very little time. And that's what I love to focus on.
Nice. So you mentioned two things that I think are really important that I'd like to get some details on. The first one is he didn't even have the $7,200, so you taught him how to raise that. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is really this idea of building teams. Because I'm actually in that process myself. I have teams for a lot of the things that I do, but I need more. And so I'd like to touch on that, at least in the first part of the show. And then if it's a deeper topic, I'm sure it is, maybe we could talk more about that at Extra. What do you think?
Sounds great. Let's do it.
Good. So let's start with, he didn't even have the $7,200, so I taught him how to get that. So could you talk to us a little bit about what sorts of strategies you helped him with? Absolutely.
So in that particular case, he had come to one of my trainings because tax deeds isn't something you should ever just show up at the auction and think, oh, I'll figure it out as I go, because you won't. You don't know what you don't know, and it'll come back to haunt you. So there's definitely certain due diligence steps you have to take. So at this point, he had the training, he had, he had the education, he had access to my team, so he didn't have to be there. Really, his job, in my opinion, isn't to go and fly from California to Texas every month and show up at the auction. That's not really a good use of your time. A much better use of your time, and what I taught him to do is I said, start going to meetup groups and different real estate investment clubs and different places where investors hang out. There's most of the people that are either looking for a strategy, they're trying to learn how to do a certain strategy, or they've got money they want to invest, but they don't know how. So there's all kinds of different people that show up at these meetings. Now, if you go to these meetings, the first thing somebody's going to ask you is, what type of real estate do you do? That's the first thing that comes up every time after your name. And so imagine you went to one of these real estate investment clubs in Los Angeles, and you said, oh, I specialize in Texas tax deeds. Well, the first thing that's going to happen is people are going to go, what the heck is a Texas tax deed? They don't know what that is. So automatically they're curious. You say you're a flipper. It's like, well, okay, cool. That's the end of the conversation. Or I have rental properties. Usually that's the end of the conversation. But if you say something that people have never even heard of before, number one, they're curious. They start asking you questions. What's a Texas tax deed? And so then you could, say, hey, well, here's some, I basically have access to these deals. And I actually gave him a bunch of deals that the team has already done. He hadn't done a deal at that point. So I gave him a list of deals that we've already done, a bunch of case studies, and he can legitimately say, hey, here's some deals that my team has done, because I let him use my team. So he can legitimately say, these are some deals my team has done, and we got this one for this amount and sold it for that. And we got this one for this amount, sold it for that. And the only thing stopping us from scaling this and doing more is, hey, if we had some more capital, we could certainly do way more deals. And so that's why I'm here. I'm looking for partners who want to put up some money, and we'll split the profits and I'll do all the work. Now, in reality, he didn't really have to do any work. His job was to go raise money and then call the team. It's kind of like having an assembly line. You push the button and away it goes. So you basically, now you have the capital. So now you call up the team, and now they go and view the properties for you. They pull title, they do all the necessary steps, and they go to the auction for you and get you the property. And so he got his first property using none of his own money. He went on to do a whole bunch after that. But it created a great win-win, because that person who didn't even know what a Texas tax deed was is now benefiting from a strategy he doesn't know how to do. And at the same time, my student is benefiting because he's doing deals he couldn't have afforded to do. And you're taking a lose-lose where neither of them could have done the deal separately, but together now they're doing a joint venture that makes sense for both of them. And so really your job sometimes is, once you have the team already built and you have all the systems in place, your job, if you don't have money, is just to go find money to feed the assembly line. And that's exactly what he did. And after you do a couple of deals, as you can imagine, he doesn't need partners anymore. And so that's exactly where he's at. But that's one of several ways to go raise money for your projects. And the thing in this particular case is, the investors can't circumvent him. They don't know how to do, even though he says, hey, it's tax deeds, and it takes place on the first Tuesday of every month, and here's where it is. They can't really circumvent him because they don't have the knowledge or training to successfully go do a deal on their own. And so they can't circumvent him. And he's already got the team. These people don't have to ever fly to Texas. They don't have to do any work other than sign a check. And so it's a great win-win. And that's some of the stuff that I love to teach people, because a lot of people don't even, they don't think outside the box. They don't get creative, and they just think, oh, I got to go save up a down payment and get a mortgage, and then I'll buy a property. And then I got to go back to work and work overtime so I can save up my next down payment. That'll work. You can absolutely do that. I call that transactional real estate, where you're doing one transaction, and then eventually you have enough money to do the second transaction. And that can work, but there's way more efficient ways to do it.
Great. So, okay. So when they're putting together these sort of private money deals, do you help them with the paperwork and the structuring and the percentage and all of that stuff on sort of how to deal with all of that stuff? Because that too can feel a little intimidating, right?
Yeah, that's actually one of the things that I love about the Wolf Pack is that we don't just give people information and set them free to go do their thing. I know from being in this industry a long, long time, I've been doing this for 33 years, and I've been training other people for probably about half that time. And a lot of people, you can take them and teach them exactly how to do a strategy, step by step by step. You can give them a blueprint, and they'll actually do the work. But at some point, they have to take that leap of faith, and they have to actually, send a contract, or they have to make that phone call and put in an offer. And a lot of people, they do all the work and then they get to the 1 yard line and then they stop because they start to get fearful. They think, what if I screwed up? What if I messed up? And so one of the things that I do is I personally look at everybody's deals and vet them to make sure they didn't miss something. And then I actually, in a lot of cases, I hold their hand and I'll get on that call with the motivated seller, for example, and help them do that call. Or, I had one of my students who had a friend that wanted to invest in him, but he said, well, you haven't done any deals yet, come back to me when you've done a bunch of deals. Well, if he would have done a bunch of deals, he wouldn't need that guy's money in the first place. So,
right.
So I basically jumped on a call with him and his potential money partner and said, yeah, well, this person doesn't have the experience, but I am personally vetting every deal with them and I'm going every step of the way with them. So we've done 4,000 deals. So you're getting 4,000 deals worth of experience. And just because you're lending the money to him doesn't mean that it's not that you have an unsafe, your money's at risk. And so that's one of the things that we do a lot differently is I'm actually there to hold people's hand when they get to that tough part. Learning the strategies, that's the easy part. Actually having faith in yourself and getting over the fear, that's a whole different story. And so if we can help people get over that, after they've done a couple of deals, of course, then your confidence is where it should be. And then then you don't need me necessarily every time you write an offer. So it works really well.
Good. So, and then you give them like contracts and stuff like that. All 100%. all of those pieces, right?
Everything. We give them contracts, we give them scripts. They know exactly what to say when they get on the phone. Sometimes they're still scared to do it. So I'll actually do it and they listen in. We give them every resource I've got. And not only that, they get my Rolodex. Like, I've been doing this for a long time and I've met so many great people along the way, including yourself. And so I'm very well connected so a lot of times, if I taught somebody how to do Texas tax as an example, and I said, okay, well, now you got to go build a team. Well, there's not really a job description that says, hey, we go to the auction on behalf of real estate investors. Nobody does that. That's something I had to create. That's a made up career. So I actually found somebody and taught them exactly step by step what they need to do. And now they do that. And so building the team for a newbie can sometimes be a little bit daunting. And so I've actually done that for them and they get access. They get to inherit my teams. They don't have to go build them from scratch. Because even if I taught you, hey, here's how you build a team step by step by step. When you're first starting, it's difficult because not everybody wants to be on your team, especially if you're a very small investor. It's sometimes hard to get good people on your team. When you're doing a lot of transactions, everybody wants to be on your team. When you're successful, it's just like if you won the Super Bowl, everybody wants to be on that team. The team that never gets to the playoffs, nobody wants to be on that team. And same thing in real estate. When you have a successful business, people start contacting you. How do we work with you? What can we do to add value? You'd be amazed how many people every day say, Mike, I want a bird dog free. I work for free. I just want to learn. And so it's interesting what happens. When I first started, I couldn't get any of my friends or family to lend me a dime. And now I get people unsolicited coming to me some people don't even know me. They see a video on YouTube. And none of my videos say, hey, if you give me money, I don't have any videos like that. But people every day come to me unsolicited and say, hey, I've got 100,000, I got 500,000, I got 50,000. How do I work with you? And so it's really interesting. Where were these people when I was first starting? But that's how it goes in the business. So you got to kind of pay your dues. And after a while, you just get in the flow and things just start to happen kind of magically.
I love that. So, so a couple more questions. Sure. This strategy or the strategies that you pick for passive income, do they fluctuate with the events or the economy? So for instance, could you do the tax lien strategy during COVID or now after, like on the backside of COVID? I don't know if we're totally out of it, but you know what I mean? Like, does it work in all situations or economies or what? Could you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, that is a great question. I'm glad you asked that actually. So yes, real estate is very cyclical, and what works in at one time in history or one market doesn't necessarily translate into a different market. So for example, you mentioned COVID. That's a great example of, hey, all the auctions shut down. There were no live auctions taking place during this time frame. And if you were only a tax deed person, that's the only strategy you knew how to do, you would have gone hungry for a year and a half because there were no auctions. Now, on the other hand, coming out of COVID, all the auctions are back open again. They have a big backlog of properties that would have got auctioned off. And so now it's a great strategy. So your timing is everything. The good news is there's so many different ways to do real estate. And there's always numerous things that are working, and then there's things that are not working. And sometimes things that stop working will work again later. And so that's one of the reasons why, I really recommend that if you don't have the pulse on the market, and if you're just getting your information from the newspaper, that's old news. By the time you see something in the newspaper, it's already happened. That's yesterday's news. And so it's really important to be on the front lines, or be, hanging out with people on the front lines and know what's going on. So right now we're going to see a lot of changes. We're going from a very, very strong seller's market because there's such a shortage of properties, and that's starting to ease up. We're already seeing that in a bunch of different markets. And probably what we're going to see next is a lot of markets turning into buyers markets. And there's going to be a lot of opportunity for pre-foreclosures, foreclosures, these tax deeds, as I mentioned. There's going to be subject to deals. And if you don't know what that means, it's basically an opportunity, even if you can't qualify for mortgage, and even if you have very little down payment, there's ways to take over other people's mortgages, especially if they're in a distressed situation, and purchase. Well, I'll just give you a really quick example. Imagine you found a place, it was worth $200,000. The mortgage is pretty close to $200,000, and these people are unable to make their mortgage payments now. And they can't call a realtor to sell it because there's no equity. So they would actually physically have to cut a check to the realtor. So they think they're doomed. They think they're stuck. Well, if you're an expert investor and you know how to do a subject to deal, you can go in there and say, hey, listen, you're in a really bad situation. I'll pay off the arrears for you and take over the home, save your credit. And imagine on that home, just to use really round numbers, the mortgage payment was $1,000 a month, and you knew it would rent for $1,500. So you've now taken over this property for next to nothing, maybe a few thousand in arrears, and you've got a property that you're paying $1,000 on the mortgage, but you're collecting $1,500 a month in rent. So now you've got this revenue on a property that you put very little money into. And once again, it really comes down to being educated on different strategies and knowing what's going to work in the market based on what's going on at any given time. And we're going to see with the rising interest rates, that's going to create a lot of people are scared. And to me, I just see tons of opportunity. That's creating opportunity. So you have to be up to date on the times, up to date on what strategies are working. If you can do that successfully, that's where the money is. And also being in the path of progress, because COVID changed so many things, like how people do work. Like we could be on a live stage in theory, but now everybody's so used to Zoom. Everything's on Zoom these days, and people don't have to go to an office anymore. So what worked before COVID, where it's advantageous to have stuff in the inner city close to where the offices are, that's not true anymore. People are moving to the suburbs now. And so if you own properties out in the suburbs and you've adapted to the changes in the market, that's where the money's going to be.
So as we see interest rates going up, what kinds of opportunities are you seeing?
Well, as interest rates go up, actually, there's some really good things as a real estate investor that come from that, even though we're all fearful of that. But one of the things we're going to see is that if you buy a rental property, for example, your tenants are going to be a lot less upwardly mobile, and they're not going to be, they're not going to say, you know what, we decided to buy a home as quickly as they were when we're at record low interest rates. So buying rental properties is great if you can get a relatively good deal right now. Your rents are going to probably continue to go up as more people get forced into renting. So that's a great strategy. We're also going to see foreclosures, people as their mortgages come due and the payment goes up in some cases dramatically. A lot less people are going to be in a good position to afford that. And so we're going to see pre-foreclosures, we're going to see foreclosures, we're going to see those tax deeds. So there's a lot of strategies that will actually benefit from higher interest rates. It's going to cost you maybe a little bit more to get in if you're using financing. But the good news is that everything is tied to inflation, and your rents are going to go up probably faster than your mortgage payment would go up by the rising interest rates, and you still can benefit. And I remember my very first property I ever bought, I remember I had a mortgage of 13.25%. And I was ecstatic to get that because the going rate was 14 and a little bit. And I got 13.25. I was so happy. And I'll never forget the day that interest rates went to 9.9. They went to single digits for the first time in my lifetime. And I was like, so I felt like a kid in a candy store. I'm going to buy every property I can get my hands on, 9.9. And now people are concerned, what if it goes to 6%? It's like, yeah, that's still really cheap money. 6%. I would never loan out my money at 6%. That's super cheap money still. But a lot of people haven't ever experienced double digit. I don't think we're going to head to double digits, by the way, but a lot of people haven't experienced and people were still doing real estate deals, including myself, when it was 13.25. And even before my time, when it was like 18, 19, 20%, people are doing real estate deals. So there's always deals to be had. And there's, in the newspapers, you think it was doom and gloom and the sky is falling. And if interest rates go up, the world's going to collapse. No, actually, it's going to create different opportunities. They'll still be there though.
So first of all, I love that. Thank you for that. Because I think people do get caught up in the doom and gloom and oh my goodness, because all the people that are talking about it are not actual investors, right? So much of it is economic theory or hearsay, right? Opinions. But there are people that are in the markets that are actually doing deals, or actually exercising their expertise, right? And doing different strategies, or moving and pivoting with the market. Every market presents new opportunities or different kinds of opportunities. And I think that's what's so cool about your Wolf Pack, or many of these networks that people can plug themselves into. If you have people that are in there that have been in the market a long time with the cycles, because you say it's cyclical, which is absolutely true, then they know the different strategies that are going to work given different circumstances. Interest rates are going up, interest rates are going down. We have a foreclosure moratorium. Now that's opening up, right? Those sorts of things. All of that stuff happens, and there are strategies for every single one of those types of situations, right?
Absolutely. And then on top of that, everything trickles down. So if the cost of living is going up because interest rates are going up, well, guess what? You're going to get paid more at work. It all evens out. It's all tied together. It's not like one thing is happening in a vacuum where interest rates are going up, but you're not going to get a pay cut if interest rates are going up. Your rent's certainly not going to go down if interest rates are going up. All this stuff is all tied together. And so, but people have all this doom and gloom and fear. And for me, it's like I've seen the movie and I know the ending. I already know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And that's why being in this business for so long, it's so advantageous, because I've been through up times, I've been through down times, I've been through times where it's just stagnant and staying the same. And a good investor can make money even when if prices drop, you can still make money. When interest rates are going up, you can still make money. And so a lot of people, especially if they're newbies, they think, oh, well, interest rates are going up, I guess I better not get into real estate investing. I better try something else. Well, I'm kind of glad sometimes that they do, because it creates opportunity for people that are not fearful. Just like Warren Buffett says, be greedy when people are fearful, and be fearful when people are greedy. And that's probably the best advice I've ever heard when it comes to real estate investing.
Yeah. Can you share with us, Mike, what you did during the COVID time, those COVID months when there were no auctions? What strategy did you use? I'm just curious.
Yeah, it was very interesting times, because I have numerous businesses, I guess you could say. So the first one is I own a bunch of rental properties. I have passive income. As I mentioned, I obviously don't collect my own rent. Other people deal with that. That went really well. People weren't moving. People were staying put. And a lot of landlords did not get a lot of rent, because the government was saying that if you don't pay people, you can't be kicked out by your landlord. Well, because we have really good strategies in place that we've used in other times where a lot of people are losing their jobs, such as 2007, we already had systems in place for that, because we know that's going to be a repeating trend. There's going to be other times in history, not just a pandemic, that's going to cause mass layoffs at some point in time. And so we were doing, and still doing, lease options, which means that our tenants, when they move into our property, they're signing 3-year leases. And then they have a second contract, which is an option for them to purchase it. And that option to purchase can be rescinded if they don't make their rent payments. And they've got some skin in the game, because they have to give what's called option consideration, which is kind of like a down payment, and it's non-refundable. Unlike a damage deposit, if they don't buy the home in the 3-year period, they don't get that money back. And we're very transparent about it. We're not trying to scam them. They know in advance that if you want to buy a property, we'll help you get there. But if you decide that we're going to do our end of the deal, if you don't do your end of the deal, we're not going to give you back your money. So they've got skin in the game, and we are working with them to get them home ownership. But there's a clause in the contract that says if you get more than 2 months behind, we can rescind your right to purchase it without giving you back your deposit. So we had almost all our tenants paying rent, and very few of them were moving because it was so hard to find anywhere to live. And so that business was better than ever. Then my second business, as you know, I sell turnkey properties in Atlanta. So what that means, I go buy properties 20, 30, 40 at a time from the banks. We inspect them, fix them, put tenants in place. Then my property management team looks after them. And I've got people that sell these for me, and we've sold 1,200 of them in the last 11 years. We sold to investors literally all over the globe. Now, during COVID, at the very beginning, it was extremely slow. Like none of our homes were selling. And I don't really care, because that just means the rent goes into my pocket. If we don't sell it, I collect the rent. So I'm still doing okay. It doesn't matter to me if I sell them or not. But Then probably like 2 months in, all of a sudden the market got really hot and the prices started to go up and everybody was fighting over properties. I had 2 investors come in, buy my entire inventory. And because the banks aren't foreclosing, there's a foreclosure moratorium. We couldn't really get more other than like one here, one there. We couldn't buy those big packages of homes. So we had a really good problem on our hands where we were sold out. We made a ton of money on that. We helped also a lot of other investors. But the problem is that even to this day, we're still having trouble getting inventory in bulk because the foreclosure process is just starting up. So that's the second business that I've got. But then my third one, which is the Wolf Pack, that all started because of COVID. I wasn't really planning on doing that. Before COVID, I would do like a tax deed training, for example, twice a year. I do a 4-day training. After the training, I'd hop on a flight. I go to somewhere, right now I'm in Costa Rica. I would go somewhere tropical because that's my happy place. And I would get off the grid for a while, not do any work. And I get bored after like 3-4 months. I call up my team, say, hey, we should put another date on the calendar. I'm bored. Let's do another event. And so that's how I was kind of doing things for many, many years prior to COVID. Now, when COVID happened, I actually went back home, which happens to be in Calgary, Canada. I don't do any investing. All my investing is in the US, by the way, but my home is actually Canada. And I went back there and I stayed put for 7 months, which is something I haven't done in many, many years. I usually go back for a week or two because I have my 2 grandsons there and my daughter. And then I hop on a flight and I take off for 2 or 3 months and then I go back. And so anyway, so I went back for a 7-month period. And when I first got back there, a lot of my friends are entrepreneurs and their businesses started to get shut down. So a lot of my friends saying, hey, Mike, my gym just got shut down or my restaurant got shut down. It's like, what do? I need to reinvent myself. I'm kind of the guy everybody comes to if they need money advice or business advice. And so anyway, everybody and their dog was coming to me asking for, what kind of real estate training can I take with you? And I go, well, I'm not doing real estate training because I normally do a 4-day live event. I can't do a live event. So anyway, I could see the demand was there. So I thought, well, instead of teaching each person one at a time, why don't I set up Zoom calls and we'll get a bunch of people on there. And that's how the Wolf Pack was born. And now, we got around 50 members or so. And I purposely keep it small because like I said, I work with people, not just in the group setting, but when they're doing an offer, I'm there to help them do the offer. And if I had 1,000 people in there, I wouldn't be able to obviously offer that service. And so it's been great though. And when I first offered it, I thought, okay, for me, that was a really big commitment to set up a group like that, because that's not my normal thing. I like to be really free and be able to travel when I want. So I thought, okay, we'll do it one day a month. We'll do 1 day a month. And we're going to run this for 1 year. At the end of the year, I'm dropping it. We're canceling it. Well, it turns out that I like teaching a lot more than I thought I did, number one. Number two, I can sit in front of Zoom a lot longer than I thought I'd have the patience for, because I never really thought that I would enjoy this, but I absolutely love, especially when everything was shut down and people weren't interacting. I had my wolf pack, I had my community. This is my family that I chose, not the one I was born into, but the one I got to choose. And I was enjoying it so much. Now we meet at least once a week. Sometimes we meet 4 times a week. And yeah, and I'm loving it. And to me, it's really fulfilling to watch my students go and crush it. And so I decided I'm never going to stop doing it. And we're going to continue to have weekly meetings. And in a couple of weeks, I'm heading to Paris. And all my students are in North America. So I'm probably gonna have to wake up 1 and 2 in the morning to teach, but I can't, I'm looking forward to it anyway. And so, I built a multi-million-dollar business in the middle of COVID that I wasn't even intending to build. And so COVID was actually, and I hate to say it because it sounds insensitive, and I know a lot of people were really adversely affected. So I don't mean this any disrespect to people who are going through tough times, but COVID for me actually really was beneficial in many ways. I was lucky enough. I didn't lose any friends or family to it. And yeah, it actually made my businesses boom and helped me create a new business that was not even on the radar. And so, but I think that also comes down to your previous question, how do you adapt, or do you keep doing the same thing? No, you got to adapt with what's showing up in the world. And sometimes there's things that are not of your choosing that are going to pop up. And if you keep doing the same thing over and over and over again, at some point it's not going to work. And so it's super important to keep with the times and keep pivoting, which is a very overused word, but pivoting. And when you can do that, it's amazing what you can accomplish. And for me, it just gave me that extra bandwidth where I wasn't traveling. I was really bored because I was watching, I never watched Netflix prior to COVID. Now I've seen so many different shows, but it gave me that extra bandwidth. And instead of using it just to watch Netflix, I did watch more than I usually do. But instead of using it just for that, I took time to figure out, well, what's the demand, and it just kind of presented itself. And I think the universe just kind of to me, the universe built the wolf pack. I didn't really have much to do with it other than I had to show up.
Yeah.
So
I love that. You had to be available for it and open
exactly. But I
and
think,
willing to do your part, right? You had to actually be willing to do the work.
of
And I
course,
think this is one of those things that we shy away from, is that, and I actually said this on another show recently, people don't want to do the work because it feels hard.
right.
But I got to tell you, working for the rest of your life or being broke for the rest of your life is harder,
It's
right?
way harder, way harder.
Right. So
and
yeah.
here's the other cool thing. This is one of the things I teach my students, is that really, if you do things right, you're really just building an assembly line. And that assembly line, if you have the right team running that assembly line, it doesn't really have to involve you that much. And so if you can get that, but once you get that infrastructure set up, it's very easy to build that second assembly line, because I already had, like, for the training and stuff, I already had my marketing team. I didn't have to rebuild that. Like, all the stuff that I needed to do to build that new business, I already had that infrastructure on existing assembly lines. And so once you get up and running, a lot of people say, oh, it's so much work. It's so much work in the beginning. And sometimes it's not really that much work. If you can get a good mentor, or you can adopt somebody's team like my students do, and you don't have to reinvent the wheel, you can actually get started really, really quickly. And then from there, it's just a building game. You can keep adding to it. And sometimes, like I said, you have to change direction a little bit and pivot and do something slightly differently. But I don't think there's anything that the real estate market could throw at me. And like I said, I've been doing this a long time, where we can't retool the assembly line to do things just slightly differently and still get a result. And so a lot of people, and mindset's so important. A lot of people, there's COVID, it's doom and gloom, and the economy is falling apart and life is over. And if you have that mindset, which is easy to do, obviously, when that's all you see on TV, when you have that mindset, it's very hard to accomplish anything. But to me, every time something changes, I see that as an opportunity, and I see it as a way to, build something new. And that's what keeps us exciting, is it's never the same day twice. And, in the last 33 years, there's never been a day where I woke up and said, oh, there's nothing I can really do today. There's no deals to be had anywhere. I never once said that. I've also never woken up unexcited. I have to pinch myself sometimes, but I get paid to do what I get to do. And I just, it's just a real passion for me. And after all these years, I never once, even when I got lazy because I had the teams and I wasn't really doing that much hands-on, I was still really excited to just create those jobs for other people, and now watch my students succeed. And so you always have to, and I did a lot of volunteer work too before COVID. I'm just ramping that up again, because a lot of it involves my travel. But I think it's really important to have something that fulfills you and excites you. And real estate still excites me very, very much.
I can't tell.
Yeah, it's pretty hard to tell. That's right. Exactly.
Mike, how many women are in the wolf pack?
It's pretty close to 50-50. So we have around
Good.
50 members. And I'd say there's at least 20 or 25, which I love, because I have so much respect for women. Because my mother, she got divorced when I was 2, and somehow we always met. I don't know how she did it, but me and my brother, there's always food on the table. And anyway, I have so much respect especially for single moms. And a lot of them I get a lot of single moms, for example, maybe they went through a divorce and they never had to manage the money before. And I always especially love helping the underdog. And I'm not saying women are underdogs. I didn't mean it in a negative sort of way, but I know that women have to work harder. They usually have more responsibilities that they're juggling. And so I especially love to teach them passive income, because I know they've got so many other things that are vying for their attention that they're equally, if not more important, like taking care of your kids. That's super important. So yeah, we have a lot of females in there, and I'm really grateful for that, because it's really in a lot of ways, a male-dominated industry. And I think because the Wolfpack, our approach isn't like, here's how you make more money. It's very heart-centered. And so here's how we can make a difference and help other people. And you can win at the same time as you help these other people. And, it does, because it's a heart-centered approach, it tends to attract more women than I think other real estate investment groups. And I'm very happy with that. I love that. And I love the diversity within the group, not just male and female, but different races, different religions. And we all come together. We all have different beliefs. And of course, everybody right now is divided over every topic. But within the group, there's none of that. There's no politics. People are doing joint ventures together. I got some people in the group with lots of money, but they don't really have, I've got some dentists in the group, for example. And one of them just sold his practice. I think he's getting like $4 million. He doesn't want to go on the front lines. He doesn't want to go to auctions. He doesn't want to go find deals. But there's other people in the group that have a lot more time, and they love finding the deals and analyzing them. And so there's people that are actually funding my students' deals. So we had one of my students picked up a 98 unit apartment building, and he didn't use any of his own money. Almost all of it was funded by the Wolfpack. And so to me, that just lights me up to see that this community didn't even exist 2 years ago. And now we have this group of people didn't know each other all over North America, and they're doing deals together, and just it lights me up. That's why we do meetings all the time, because I just get so excited to hear their success stories. And to me, it's fun. I live vicariously through them.
Awesome. Mike, first of all, the reason that I brought you back is because I know how heart-centered you are. And it's been interesting. The ladies that did go to your 3-day event, I think it was like 2 years ago, that was one of the things that they mentioned over and over again to me in sort of feedback. I like to get feedback when my ladies attend stuff, that you're so heart-centered. And I knew that. And the person that referred you to me is a friend of yours. And she said that. So that's definitely your reputation. And I know that you live up to it. So I love that. And I love that you bring that into the wolf pack. And thank you for mentioning that today, because it's such, I think as women, it is really important that it's heart-centered. We want to make our money. We want to be successful,
Absolutely.
but there's got to be some heart in it. We do business a little bit differently. And so that's part of what I love so much about you and what you do too.
And by the way, you never have to feel bad. I know a lot of people actually feel bad. It's like, well, these people are really struggling. I don't want to take any money. It's really important to give, but it's also important to learn how to be a good receiver, because you can't sustain your real estate career. If you want to help thousands of people, we've done 4,000 transactions. And on most of those transactions, there's somebody struggling on the other side of that deal. There's somebody who is, most of the stuff we've done is pre-foreclosures, foreclosures, tax deed auctions. On the other end of that transaction, there's always somebody struggling. So that means we've been able to help 4,000 people, give or take. Now, if I would have said, oh, well, I just want to give, I don't want to receive anything. Well, I could have helped a few people, but then I would have to go back to getting a job, and then I wouldn't be I'd be helping very few people. And so, money is just a form of energy, and you take it in, just like oxygen, you take it in and then you put it back out there. And the more you can make, to me, the size of my bank account is directly proportional to the number of people that I have helped and that are in a better spot as a result of them connecting with me. And so that's when you measure it that way. And then I know I can go make a difference. I give back to a lot of different causes that I'm very passionate about. I wouldn't be able to do that on the scale that I do if I was, and sometimes people are, I think it's awesome to be too heart-centered, but sometimes you also have to work on yourself too, and you have to put yourself in a good spot. So, so that's some of the stuff that we teach, is the mindset around, like, a lot of people, especially women, tend to struggle. It's like, well, that person's going to lose their home to the auction. It's like, I don't want to take anything. It's like, well, you can do that, but how about you make lots of money first, create a win for them, create a win for yourself, make lots of money. And then down the road, if you want to give it all away, you can. Or if you want to work for free and just make it a cause to help other people that are struggling, you can, but don't do it at your own expense. It's just like when you go on an airplane and they say, if there's turbulence, the oxygen mask might come down from the ceiling, and put it on yourself first instead of your kid. And the first time I ever heard that, I go, what? That sounds horrible. What do you mean put it on yourself first before your kid? But then I thought, well, if you're not in good condition, you can't help anybody. And so you got to make sure that you're safe first so you can take care of your kids. And so once you kind of look at it that way, you realize that, yeah, we need to be, and I struggled with this for a long time too. I have had a hard time being a good receiver, but once I learned how to do that, everything got to, I got to the next level, and now we've been able to help a lot more people as a result. So being a good receiver allows you to be an even better giver.
I love that. I love that. We could just talk forever, but we're out of time.
I would. I got nowhere to go.
So there's a couple of things. We don't even have time for the 3 rapid fire questions, ladies. So we're not going to do that, but you heard that from Mike before. But anyways, so there's a couple of things. First, Mike, could you tell us about the free gift you're offering? Ladies, this is a thing, is if you want to connect with Mike and be on his mailing list so that you know when his events happen, because they're kind of sporadic, or you want to find out about what he's doing, go ahead and get his free download. It in itself is very valuable, but the big thing is it gets you on his list so that you can hear more about him. I know many of you have asked me how to connect with him in the future and when he's doing the next event, blah, blah, blah. The best way to find out about that is to actually sign up for his mailing list. So when you do that, this is what you get. Could you tell us about your free ebook?
Yes, absolutely. So this ebook was written at the beginning of COVID because I was getting all these people who were, like I said, losing their jobs, losing their businesses. A lot of them did not have very good finances. And by the way, when I started 33 years ago, I was a starving ex-university student. I was trying to get enough money to pay off my student loans so I could go back. Originally, I was living my parents' dream for me to become a lawyer, which was never my dream, but it was my parents' dream. And after I got my first degree, I had all these student loans. So anyway, so I know what it's like to be starting in real estate, and maybe you don't have a lot of resources. So the book was written kind of from the perspective of what I wish I knew 33 years ago. Because like I mentioned, I used to do transactional real estate just like a lot of people do, try to save a down payment, qualify for mortgage, buy a house. And then I learned down the road, there's so many other ways you can buy real estate with very little or no money. So this book is the top 7 strategies that are working right now. They were, like I said, it was written at the beginning of COVID. So it's stuff you can do from while you're at home in front of your computer, 7 strategies you can do without even leaving your home, even if you have little or no money. And so it's a really easy read on purpose, because I know people won't read it if it's like 2,000 pages. So it's like 20 pages of big letters, but it talks about the 7 strategies that you can do, and you can actually do them right now. And these are the things, and they're still all working. The market has shifted a little bit, but some of them are you couldn't do at the beginning of COVID, like the tax deed auctions. I was saying, get prepared for these auctions. Once they open up again, there's going to be a lot of inventory, a lot of backlog. So anyway, I talk about that and a whole bunch of other strategies that you can get started on, even if you have very little resources. And it's absolutely free. So you have nothing to lose by checking it out.
I love that. And so to get that, go to blissfulinvestor.com/Mike Wolf. So it's blissfulinvestor.com/Mike, M-I-K-E, Wolf, W-O-L-F. So go check that out. And I've read it. It's really, really good. So you'll enjoy that. So unfortunately, we don't have time for the 3 rapid fire questions, but we do have time for extras. So we're going to be talking, we talked very slightly in this show about building a team. I know that Mike is correct that if you have a mentor that's willing to share their team, that's the quickest way to build a team. All of us are not necessarily going to be able to do that or want to do that yet. And so we need some tips on how to start that path towards building our own team. And so we're going to be talking about that in extra. So if you have extra, if you're already subscribed, please stay tuned. If you're not, but would like to be, go to realestateinvestingforwomenextra.com. You get the first 7 days for free. So that's realestateinvestingforwomenextra.com. For those of you that are leaving Mike and I today, thank you so much for joining us for this great conversation. I look forward to seeing you next time. And until then, remember, goals without action are just dreams. So get out there, take action, and create the life your heart deeply desires. I'll see you soon. Bye.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed today's show. If you'd like to find out more about how to become a blissful millionaire, go to blissfulinvestor.com. See you next time.